Tell Michael he was missed. I think next up we have University of Central Florida.
Mentioned in the transition, we should thank them for giving us one of their best and brightest as we go together.
The chancellor reminded me that we certainly want to thank New College for giving us one of their best and brightest to serve as our newest member of our Board of Governors. So, Governor Long, we welcome you and look forward to working with you. Sure.
Given we're kind of a full half hour behind now, I think based on our schedule, are we planning to still break for lunch or not?
I hadn't gotten that far. You tell me what your preference is, and I'll work with your schedule.
I think either works.
Yeah, we'll keep going. We'll probably just start lunch a little bit late is what I'm anticipating. Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating. And I'll do a better job of keeping us on schedule personally. I promise, Mikey, I promise. Dr. Hitt, we're ready when you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let me introduce my colleagues who are with me at the table. Paige Borden is Assistant Vice President for Institutional Knowledge Management. Diane Chase is our Executive Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. Rick Schell is Vice President and Chief of Staff. Tony Waldrop is our Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. And Rich Crotty is our newest trustee. Rich was the mayor of Orange County for, what, 8 years before? 10 years. 10 years. I didn't mean to short. She's also an alumnus. We're awfully proud of Rich. We appreciate this opportunity, Madam Chair, to tell you a few things about our university. Be sure I understand how this clicker works. All right. We, as a number of others have done, have modeled or molded our presentation around the four goals of our state university system as we read them from the Board of Governors website. And they are to provide access to and production of degrees, meeting statewide professional and workforce needs, building world-class academic programs and research capacity, and meeting community needs and fulfilling unique institutional responsibilities. What you see before you on the screens is a statement of our 5 university goals, which were established in 1992, shortly after I began my presidency. And I think these complement the goals of the Board of Governors rather well. We're not shy. Our first goal is to offer the best undergraduate education available in Florida. Our fall 2011 freshman class is among the best in the state. It will include 74 National Merit Scholars, most of whom will, almost all of whom will be in our Burnett Honors College. We're expecting an enrollment of 525 freshmen in the Honors College with an SAT average of 1388 and a high school GPA of 4.2. These students in the honors program take a number of honors college section classes, and the top section size for any of those is 20. I mention this because it's tempting to view universities as monoliths, and I would encourage you, whether it's UCF, USF, University of Florida, whoever it is, realize that within the larger campuses, certainly there are a myriad of programs that differ greatly in terms of the selectivity, the kind of pedagogy that's used, the size of classes students take, etc. So we're very proud of our Honors College and think it is a very great value and certainly contributes to our progress toward meeting our first goal of offering outstanding undergraduate education generally. The graduates of our university go on to the very best graduate and professional schools in the nation, and they've earned prestigious awards such as Jack Kemp, Astronaut, Goldwater, Truman, and Rhodes Scholarships, NSF Fellowships, etc. Our second goal is to achieve international prominence in key programs of graduate study and research, and certainly we've done that in fields such as simulation and training, optics and photonics, and hospitality management. Among the fields emerging as areas of international prominence are educational counseling, digital media, biomedical sciences, and engineering. Our third goal is to provide international focus to our curricular and research programs, and our geography has led us to focus our efforts in this realm, mostly in the Caribbean and Central American regions, but new opportunities for cooperation have recently opened in the Middle East and in Far Eastern regions. We'll be reporting in years ahead on results there. Our fourth goal is to become more inclusive and diverse, and I just report that this year UCF had a non-majority student population of 35%, which closely reflects the demographics of our region. Our fifth goal is the foundation for the other four, really. It is to be America's leading partnership university. And it has allowed us to expand our access to resources and to people that make possible successful pursuit of the other four goals. Looking at results on our undergraduate program, our efforts to achieve excellence there, we as others will point to data on retention and student success and graduation as evidence that things are going well. If you look at our one-year retention rate, overall it is 87%, and I would note that retention for Hispanic students is at 87%, and that actually retention among African American students is slightly greater than 87%. So these are not averages that don't take into account or don't fully represent the success being enjoyed by our non-majority students. Indeed, African Americans and Hispanics are doing really as well as Anglo students and other ethnic minorities in first-year retention. Our six-year graduation rate is at 63%. Now that's certainly not as good as you will hear from the University of Florida or Florida State, but it is, I believe, the best among the other universities in our system. I'm not including New College in that. I think they're a different kind of operation, but if you look at the larger institutions, I'm pretty confident that 63% is the best you will find. And I take particular pride in the fact that there's a nice upward slope to that curve in the lower left of the slide. You know, it was nothing to be really that pleased about 45% when I began my presidency 19 years ago, and we built steadily through the efforts of a great many talented faculty members and staff members and students. We built that rate steadily over the years. Number of bachelor's degrees awarded, that's clearly the gold standard for how well you're doing in meeting the goal of providing access to and production of high-quality degrees. You know, that's grown from less than 5,000 in 95-96 to more than 10,000 in 2009-2010. In fact, we conferred more than 13,000 degrees this last year. We've hit more than 200,000 degrees since 1968 when we began offering classes, and they tell me that I personally have conferred 163,000 some degrees in my 19 years. No wonder I'm feeling a little bit weary. We're number 2 in the nation in the number of bachelor's degrees awarded, number 2 in overall enrollment, number 2 in number of bachelor's degrees awarded, trailing Arizona State, by the way, in that. If you look at our peer institutions from the work plan, we are number 2 in number of degrees awarded to Hispanic and African American students as well. Lower right of this slide, you'll see the course delivery options and how many students are receiving instruction from each of them. Note the very steady growth and more recently dramatic growth in web-based courses and the emergence over the last 5 years, 10 years of the lecture capture technology, the video. About 30% of the instruction that we deliver now is by electronic means. And that has enabled us to continue to offer access and to provide the flexibility that students at a metropolitan university need to accommodate work and family obligations. So if a student were to say to me 15 years ago, I can't get the general education course I need at hours that I can take it, my work interferes with it, well, that would have been a problem. We'd had to really work to address that. Now the answer would be, well, why don't you take it by distributed learning? It's available online. We began working on that problem 5 or 8 years ago, and I think we've largely managed to get our general education curriculum onto the web-based offerings at this point. One more point before I leave that. Look at the blue part of the graph. That is traditional face-to-face instruction, and it's instructive that as we have continued to grow dramatically, that curve is flat for more than 5 years. So the way we have been able really to continue to grow and offer access to a high-quality education is through the use of distributed learning. In the graduate and professional area, we're increasing our emphasis on doctoral degree production. While building world-class academic programs and research activities, we're also emphasizing the production of degrees that contribute to the state's workforce and professional development goals. These include the Professional Science Master's degree and, of course, the professional degrees awarded by our College of Medicine. Happy to report that just last week, the Liaison Committee on Medical Education granted provisional accreditation to our College of Medicine. That's, of course, the fastest we could get to the highest level of accreditation that's available after only 2 years. So we were very pleased to get that work. If you look at our Professional Science Master's programs, they are in fields like simulation, biotechnology, conservation biology, healthcare informatics, and a fifth one is was just approved by our Board of Trustees. It is in engineering management. So all of these professional science master's programs are geared to professionals who will aid in economic development throughout our state. It's interesting to see that over the last 5 years, we have seen a 33% growth in master's degrees awarded, and I'm happy to note that our master's degree in video gaming was ranked number 2 in the nation by the Princeton Review. Our program was outranked only by the University of Southern California's program. We've also seen a 60% growth in doctoral degrees conferred since 2005. We strongly support the state university system's goal to build research capacity. I'm sorry, I'm off track here. In looking at our enrollment projections, you'll see that our activities certainly reflect intent to provide access to baccalaureate and graduate degrees for qualified students in our 3.6 million person service area. If you look at our annual new student numbers on the left side of the graph, you'll see that the biggest percentage increase over time is in the CC or community college transfer students. We have instituted, as some of you know, I'm sure, a program called Direct Connect with 4 consortium partners: Valencia College, Seminole State College, Brevard, and Lake Sumter Community Colleges. And that has really proved to be a success that is so great that we wonder sometimes if we have been presented with an insurmountable opportunity. I'll go into more detail on that a little down the road, but it has really excited not only our community college partners but their students. And if we are interested in meeting the need for a higher percentage of our state citizens who have baccalaureate degrees or higher, I'll tell you, I think this is a way to do it. We are seeing a tremendous interest in coming on to UCF from those college partners. If you look at the numbers in the fall headcount enrollment estimates, we're projecting something over 59,000 for this year. We were at 56,377 or something last fall. The number, these are pretty solid estimates of where we will be if we continue to offer access to citizens of our state, and particularly in Central Florida. It's a wonderful opportunity, but it's difficult to manage. If you look at new programs that we're proposing over the next 3 years, there are 17. I would just point out that these are geared toward responding to our region's workforce and professional development needs. Moreover, 13 of the 17 are also listed among the strategic programmatic emphases established by the Board of Governors. We are strongly supportive of the state university system's goal to build research capacity that is world-class. When I arrived at UCF in 1992, we had extramural grants and contracts totaling about $28 million. This past year, extramural funding exceeded $133 million. Carnegie Commission Foundation ranked us among the very high research activity institutions in our nation. We're one of 108 institutions in the United States to receive this designation, one of 4 in the state university system, and 5 in our state of Florida, counting University of Miami. So it's Florida, Florida State, USF, UCF, University of Miami. The IEEE did a ranking of U.S. institutions in terms of the impact that patents awarded to their faculty members had. We ranked 3rd in the nation. I'm not quite sure how they did this. I read, but I couldn't quite get my head around it. Probably Tony understands it, having been a VP for research for a good while. The interesting thing to me was that the 2 entities that ranked ahead of us were the University of California system and the University of Texas system. So here you've got a young university in Central Florida, and we're 3rd to 2 of the most successful and illustrious systems in the United States. So whatever they did, I hope they do more of it. We thought that was an especially astute ranking. Well, this is interesting. Here we go. I apologize for something of an apples and oranges presentation on this economic impact slide. If you look at the graph on the left, it mixes a number of things together. If you look at our incubator, we've got hundreds of jobs being created, average salary of about $60,000. If you look at the high-tech corridor, which is not uniquely ours, it's a partnership between UCF, USF, and the University of Florida. We're talking about 10,000 jobs that are created or impacted over a period of time. If you look at the simulation industry in Central Florida, which we highly impact through our Institute for Simulation and Training and the Central Florida Research Park that adjoins our campus, then you're talking 16,000 plus jobs. And the total research parks, direct and indirect, direct and impacted, about 20,000 jobs. Now, here's the one that's really a different breed of cat. The medical city, that's an estimate or projection done by Arduin, Laffer, and Moore for the year 2018. We think we're on track to get there, but that's a long way off, and the estimate there is 30,000 jobs. And of course we know that the impact that they're projecting from all of those jobs and the activities of the medical city referenced in the table on the right is an annual economic impact of $7.6 billion. The other figures are pretty darn conservative, saying that the incubator has a $500 million impact, high-tech corridor 750. That's pretty conservative. The simulation industry is really a really conservative estimate. More than that, in just contracts flow through the commands that are in the Central Florida Research Park, some of them housed in buildings that are really University of Central Florida buildings. So that's a pretty conservative estimate of economic impact. want to talk a little bit about differential tuition. Just to remind everyone, based on some questions that were asked this morning, the agreement was that we would continue to raise tuition up to 15% a year until our tuition reached the national average. But the assumption was that the national average would grow at 4% annually. I don't think there's been a year when it's grown as little as 4%, and we, of course, are bound to no more than a 15% increase, so we're not gaining much ground on that national average. But it has provided, as others have pointed out, an enormously helpful stream of revenue to offset what for UCF has been about a $100 million loss over the last 3 or 4 years in our state appropriation. I'm not sure where we would be without this program. And so, we apologize for not having made a lot of progress in some areas, but what we're doing with this differential tuition is sustaining programs that would otherwise be really deeply curtailed or demolished by these budget cuts. Next year, the differential tuition figure for us will be $24.96 per credit hour. That's up from $15.88 in 2010, 2011. But that translates to $24 to $25 million in revenue for us, and it enables us to just about hold our own in terms of overall revenue. If you look at what we will do with the monies, it's a longer story than we've got time for today. But let me just say that the 30% that will be dedicated by policy to need-based aid will enable us to make 13,200 awards. Now, some students can get more than one award. The average award is, I think, about $555. But that 13,200 award is up from 726 this past year. So we've got just about a doubling of awards funded through differential tuition, and I'm sure that's going to be needed with what's going on with Bright Futures and other changes and the loss of other appropriations for need-based aid. So again, the differential tuition is a godsend. If you look beyond the financial aid that we're awarding through differential tuition, we added or saved from elimination 929 courses. We were able to retain or hire 114 faculty members and retain or hire 28 academic advisors. So without the differential tuition money, we would be really in a world of hurt. We also invested differential tuition dollars to support student retention by revising our general education and math classes. In freshman composition, we had seen an upward creep in the section size so that the average was 27 students per class. Doesn't sound like much, but by dropping that to 25, we found that we got much better writing. Now, there were some curriculum changes that were undertaken as well, but we had comparisons to 27 versus 25. And then to see what would happen if we cut it more dramatically, we had a number of sections last year that we ran with 19 students. Long story short, there were clear advantages in going from 27 to 25, but it wasn't at all clear. In fact, it was clear that there was that the further gains we saw in going from 25 to 19 were simply not worth the money. They were marginal improvements and not worth the additional resources it took to get there. We've also increased funding through differential tuition for our university-wide writing center, and we initiated a Writing Across the Disciplines program that encourages and supports faculty members in other disciplines like nursing, for instance, to include good solid writing requirements in courses they teach. They get assistance in how to do that and how to evaluate the writing. I'm particularly pleased with a project that was undertaken by members of our mathematics department. They redesigned their college algebra course and reduced face-to-face lectures by 30%. That 30% time was then spent in laboratory settings where the students applied math concepts to word problems and received significant one-on-one tutoring support. So less time sitting in the classroom hearing lectures, more time in a laboratory applying the mathematical concepts to word problems and getting peer tutoring. Because of the redesign, the pass rate in college algebra, and really this is grades of A, B, or C, has increased from 61% to 75%, and students earning a grade of A or B in the course increased from 38% to 57%. Now that is an enormous improvement in effectiveness and efficiency. A student who can't earn at least a grade of C is really not ready to go on to the next course. So we have really done something that improves the efficiency of our instructional process dramatically. They're now extending this reasoning to the calculus course, and early reports are rather encouraging from there as well. Dealing with our legislative budget request, I'm not going to go into any great detail on this, but let me just say that we're really, I think the LBR clearly reflects the needs and priorities of our university. As we continue to meet the access mission of our state university system, and last year we conferred more than 13,500 degrees, we have an acute need to hire more faculty members. So we're asking for a total of $18.4 million in the LBR, and $13.2 million of that, or 70%, is requested to hire tenured or tenure-track faculty members. Another $3 million would go towards support of Pegasus Health, which is our faculty practice plan and is important for clinical education of medical students. Another $1 million for the medical college to improve coordination and quality of health care. That's in our original medical school budget plan. The $3 million would be a new request. And then the last significant item I would mention is a $600,000 request to support delivering education to students with disabilities. I'm not sure what the experience is on other campuses, but we have seen a veritable explosion in requests for assistance for students who have learning disabilities over the last several years. And it's, what's this year's surprise number? One year it was $500,000 above the budget. Budget's increased, adjusted upward. Next year it's $250,000, and we really need to get some help if we're going to do what we are required by law to do for these students. This slide has some really instructive information in it. If you look at the bar graph on the left, you'll see that we take a lot more transfer students than our peer institutions in the state. Last fall it was 4,500, and the next highest institution is FIU at 2,400, followed by USF, FSU, and the University of Florida. We take about 31% of the students who transfer from Florida College with an Associate of Arts or an articulated Associate of Science degree. That's, as has been pointed out earlier, a very efficient and effective way to produce baccalaureate degrees. We have the same result that Joe Glover reported for University of Florida. There is a little bit of a semester adjustment, but except in the STEM areas, the laboratory sciences really, and engineering, these students perform just as indistinguishably really in terms of percentage earning passing grades and so forth from the native students. Now, I said except for laboratory sciences. There is a difference there, but it's not great. But there is a clear difference. But it's not night and day. They just don't do quite as well. However, as was also touched on in the University of Florida's presentation through questions from the floor, it costs more to educate those upper division students. If you look at the center, the little stacked bar there, it's about 55% more expensive to do the upper division courses, with the direct instructional costs are $98.86 per hour as opposed to $63.64. So if we're serious about maintaining 2+2 or expanding it, we would say there needs to be a little bit of recognition of the additional cost. Everybody always complains about the, certain disciplines where we're instructing students, but it costs less to educate a psychology major than it does an electrical engineering major. And it costs less to teach engineering at the lower division than it does at the upper division. It costs less to teach psychology at the lower division than it does at the upper division. So if we're serious about this, we would ask for a little help from the legislature in recognition of these costs. Finally, I hate this. I'm going to sound like I'm whining here. I hope I'm really not. But we, in looking at this very high research activity classification group, we have the highest student to faculty ratio in it. And over the last 10 years, we've seen a decrease from 80% to 70% in the number of our instructional faculty who are tenured or tenure earning. We need some help, and that's why we're asking for that $13 million plus to hire additional faculty members. If we're interested in maintaining the high research productivity, clearly you can't have an ever decreasing percentage of your people who are tenure earning or tenured. Those are the folks who are going to write the proposals and get the grants and do the research that help fulfill that mission. So we've got a way to go there. We need to pay some real attention to that. Finally, our slogan is that UCF stands for opportunity. Let me just hit a couple of brags here in the last minute or so. The Carnegie Foundation looks at engaged learning engagement, curricular engagement. We have their designation as a curricular engaged institution. We've got outreach and partnership designation. We've got undergraduate research leadership institution designation. We've got all of these nice recognitions flowing from largely the fact that we've got 28,000, nearly 700 students involved in community-based activities across the campus. All of that has led to recognition of some very high-quality programs on our campus. I mentioned earlier the Direct Connect program with our community college or state college partners. They tell us that there are 82,600 students who have identified as wanting to come to UCF. Now, not all of those will. Not all of those will. But it is a very popular program, and we're getting a lot of good students from it, and more to come. The other opportunities. If you look at our business incubator program, we've now got 10 incubators in our system. How do we afford them? Well, the counties have figured out that they generate more tax revenue than it costs them to support our establishing an incubator in their area. So we've got 10 existing incubators. We're not putting a whole lot of state or university money into them. The counties where the jobs are being generated are paying for them. And we got an 11th that's in process of being approved now. When Rich Crotty was mayor of Orange County, he kind of led the way in understanding this, that by partnering with the university, he could generate real jobs, real economic development for Orange County. And he was my hero in leading the way to get that movement going. If you look at the Florida High Tech Corridor Council, our partnership with USF and University of Florida, we've funded more than, I think it's about 1,080 projects now. And that has meant wonderful opportunities for our students to work with not just our own faculty members, but scientists and engineers from employers throughout Central Florida. And we've already mentioned our Medical City. Those of you who visited that Medical City complex understand the enormous development that's taking place there with the VA hospital, Sanford Burnham, the University of Florida's research building, the Nemours Hospital. It is an amazing development that is forecasted again to produce a $7.6 billion annual economic impact by 2018. So we've got a very great many things going at our campus. We are the second largest university in the nation now in terms of headcount enrollment. That's fine, but the real question is, what is the quality of what we're doing? And I hope I've thrown some good light on some bragging points for our university in these remarks this morning. Thank you.
Any question? Warren?
Mr. President, if you're part of a big organization, I'm talking about a public company, and they have different divisions around the country. I have seen it time and time. The company brings all the divisions in, and they said, okay, we want to go with best practices. Do the 11 universities in the state of Florida get together and try to come up with the best practices?
I'm not sure they would label it as such. The president share information on what is working for us in our meetings with Chancellor Brogan. And I know that our academic, our provost and academic VPs meet regularly, and you've had some joint efforts, I think, in studying what we're doing. The Council of the Administration and Finance Officers, I know, has had some good efforts on Frank, would you call it best practices in purchasing and business services? I've had some reports from our shared services. So there's some of it going on, but I wouldn't describe it as an intense effort.
But that's not a best practice. That's, again, trying to put your resources together to buy at a better price. For instance, 2+2 program. You have an unbelievable, successful 2+2 programs. Do they come out at that conversations on the provost level, on the president's level? I have to tell you, I know so many people that did take the 2+2. They are so delighted that they know they can go to college, get it at a lower cost, and then they go to the upper degree. They know where they're going. They know how they're going to get graduate. They know they're going to do that. Do you guys have that conversation among yourself?
I would not characterize it as a best practice conversation on the 2+2 model. There have been one or two institutions, maybe three, who've really been serious about that. I think we've added a fourth with West Florida. But I don't think everybody sees the same opportunity there that we do. And I don't know that I would recommend that everybody do it to the degree we have now.
Is it worthwhile for the system, Board of Governors, to do a study of the 2+2 program?
I think it's worthwhile, but I wouldn't expect, for instance, that the University of Florida, as our land-grant flagship, might go into it to the same degree that a University of Central Florida or University of West Florida or University of South Florida.
Do you think it's worthwhile at least look at it?
Yes.
And I understand maybe Florida wouldn't do it, but we have 11 universities.
Yes.
You think there is enough saving that we get our students to go and do the first 2 years at the college level, which is the cost of delivery is by far less expensive than the university system?
I think it's certainly worth looking at. It's a little more complicated though than it sounds at first blush. If you look at, we look at the Direct Connect and 2+2 as a way of maintaining access as the demand for freshman admission at our institution keeps ratcheting up our requirements. Last fall, our average SAT, we get about 30,000 applications for 6,000 plus seats in the freshman class. The average SAT was, I think, 1237. We know that there are a lot of students who could do successful work in a number of our curricula who can't get in as freshmen. We're able to say to them, if they live in Central Florida, well, go to Seminole, go to Valencia, go to Brevard, go to Lake Sumter, and then you're guaranteed admission if you get an Associate of Arts degree. So for us, it's a way of maintaining an open door of access without diluting the quality of our freshman class. If they'll go to the community college and show that they've got the organization, the gumption to get an Associate of Arts degree, we'll guarantee their admission. So it's a little different than just saying it's cheaper. It's also, for us, it's a way of being true to the mission of state universities to provide access, while at the same time having a more academically illustrious freshman class.
Would you think that by doing that it will give you more opportunity to bring in more students to give them the bachelor or master's degree?
If it's done correctly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You have to have, and we're still learning on this. We're working with our college partners. One of the big things about the Direct Connect program is we're pushing academic advisement from UCF out to those college partner campuses. As part of the problem you run into is students come in from a community college. They may or may not have really had much advising as to what they need to be taking in order to immediately move forward with their degrees at a state university. So we're trying to say, look, if you want to be part of Direct Connect, here's your opportunity for some really good academic advising while you're in the community college. And we think if we can get that really rolling, it's going to help the success rate of those students, and it will become much more cost effective.
Thank you.
Dr. Marshall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I had a question, but Maury's comments about the 2+2 program have pretty well answered what I had in mind, so I'll hold that.
Governor Beard and Governor Yost.
I just wanted to ask a question about the student-faculty ratio. I'm not sure I understand exactly how distance learning and all of that type of thing fits into it, whether those students that are taking courses off campus are part of that ratio or not.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
One thing that I just might comment on, there was an old style view of distance learning that I would characterize as sort of a technologically upgraded version of the sunrise semester. Dick, you're old enough to remember sunrise semester. You know, you took a pretty good teacher and put them on television, and the whole world could watch. And I've heard university presidents say, we're going to do this distance learning thing, and the only added staff members we'll need will be people to open the envelopes and take the checks out from the students who are going to take these courses. Well, you find out that if you really do distance learning appropriately, you don't gain a lot of efficiency in terms of the number of faculty members it takes. It takes about the same number of faculty members to do that teaching as it does if they're face-to-face. Where you gain the real efficiency is to be able to aggregate demand. So that if we offer a distance learning class, you know, we might get 5 students in Daytona, Governor Ossaney, and another 10 in Cocoa, and 5 down in Melbourne or Palm Bay, and you put together a section size that makes it cost effective to do the instruction. You meet the needs of those different learners. Don't assume necessarily when you hear distance learning that you're able suddenly to do hundreds of students where normally you do tens. It doesn't work that way. Not if you want quality. It doesn't work that way.
Governor Yost?
President Hitt, so your student-faculty ratio of about 32 is, what, 20% higher than any other university in the system, 30% higher than the average. And now I'm looking, last year, on work plan, you proposed a 1% increase in enrollment over the next 5 years, 1% per year, and now that number's up to 3%. I'm wondering about how sustainable that is, given a student-faculty ratio that is already
not terribly
way out of line. Yeah,
I mean, we need help, and
sure.
if we are very committed to meeting the needs of Central Florida, and you know, you got 3.6 million people, and we're the only major university really that's serving it. You've got smaller private institutions and the usual panoply of for-profits, but we're the state university serving them. But you know, there's only so much stretch in the rubber band, and you know, even if we had, and we don't, a lot of empty classrooms we could fill, we don't have the faculty members to staff it. So these are projections based on the notion that somehow, some way, we're going to get some help on being able to hire additional faculty members.
And that's really dependent upon the LBR to come up with that
The
money.
LBR and not getting further cuts. You know, we still, even this year, we got about an $18 million cut. We're pretty much break even, but if we had that 18 million that is taken up out of our differential tuition, we'd be hiring more faculty members than we are. We're hiring some now, but we're not hiring nearly the number we
No,
need.
at $13 million LBR to hire new faculty minus $18 million cut next year doesn't leave you.
Doesn't help much, yeah.
Governor Perez?
Mr. President, you may not know if this correlation exists, but I'm just wondering, is there any kind of relationship between our Direct Connect students and are they disproportionately taking some of the online distant learning courses? Is there a relationship between the Direct Connect folks and distance learning, or is it kind of the same number of enrollment as in the general population?
I think it's pretty typical of the general population. I'm getting affirmation on that from folks who really know. One of the things we've done to justify our investment in distributed learning over the years, and we have made a very substantial investment in a faculty development program and faculty support program that includes people who teach faculty members how to teach on the web. We've got instructional designers, web specialists, all of that. We justified it based on our knowledge that a big percentage of the students who take those courses also take face-to-face instruction with us on our main campus. And if you look, we've done some Venn diagrams that show who these distance learners are, and gosh, it's a mixture. We've got people who take distance learning and are taking face-to-face instruction on two different campuses with us. So they're, you know, distance learning, taking something in Cocoa and taking something on the main campus in Orlando. But it helps you justify the money you invest if you know that it's going to serve a growing population of regular students. You know, we've seen University of Illinois, Western Governors University, there have been some notable busts on huge investments in distance learning when people develop a big infrastructure and a lot of courses only to find that nobody would take them. So if you're going to make an investment, it helps if you're pretty sure that you've got students already who will take the offerings. We've got students taking 4 distributed learning courses from their dormitory room on our campus.
Dan?
No, I just, on the distance learning, again, I just want to make sure I heard right, though. The cost of the distance learning is not a cost reduction, really. I mean, yeah, what it costs you to support the distance learning, yeah.
There's certainly capital costs that you cut. I mean, I don't know what we would do if we suddenly had to take all of our distance learning students and put them into a classroom environment.
Right.
I don't think we've got them.
But you're also offsetting that with more other technology infrastructure costs
Yeah.
to some degree.
To some degree. Yeah. But we had one grant project funded through Carol Twiggs' initiative where we looked at blended learning and found some savings if you considered all of those factors. There was still a significant, although not overwhelming, cost savings if you took into account capital costs.
Governor Colson?
Mr. President, I have an impression that, because I talk to other universities, and I think you're kind of the model, people saying, hey, I want to do it like UCF did it. And you all have been, it appears to me, you all have been able to fund some of your research and some of your growth in the STEM areas through your growth of your student body. And the only problem that resulted of that is it was a cost in your student faculty ratio and your tenured faculty. But the positive was you've built a terrific engineering school. You've got this medical campus going, and on a cost-benefit analysis, you can look at that and say, you know, this was the way to do it. We did the right way.
Well, it was the only way we could figure out.
That's right. That's the only. So now you've got this student faculty ratio that is a goal of yours to improve. So as you grow going forward, unless there's new money coming in, that growth can't be used to fund to as great a degree the expansion of these research programs, I would assume, because I would assume you don't want your student faculty ratio to get any worse than it is. And
Well, no, we don't, but let me just say, if you really go in and look at the empirical evidence on student-faculty ratio, I don't think it's going to be as eye-popping as everybody assumes it is. There are courses and disciplines where it makes a real difference, and there are a lot where it doesn't.
well, and that may be, and frankly, I think that's one of the things we ought to know a little bit about going forward, is whether or not that's a number we should be as concerned about as I am, but maybe in the way we educate over the next 30 years, it's not the number we should be focused on as much.
Well, I think we ought to, I want to give all points of view some respect here. It ought to be viewed as an empirical question. If I'm wrong and it's more important than I think it is, there are probably ways of proving that. If not, then maybe we ought to relax a little bit about some of it. But I don't think 31 or, if we're at 30 or 31, wherever we are at this moment, I'm certainly not suggesting that I'm going to be happy if we're at 35 or 40. What we see happening is that we're filling up all of that space where it doesn't much matter. We don't have those. We don't have the margins that we had 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and the rubber band's getting stretched pretty tight.
So your growth will have to be, your growth, the tuition dollars from your growth will have to be used mainly to fund that growth as opposed to being used to fund other types of projects.
Probably much more so, unless we can start to get a more reasonable pattern of state appropriation. Remember, as Bernie Manchin said earlier, if we hadn't lost all of this money that we've lost in our state appropriation, he's lost, I think he said 200 million, we've lost about 100 million. Gosh, if we had that in the differential tuition, we'd be telling you a lot more really great stories here.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
With that, Dr. Hood, I want to thank you and your team for your presentation. My plan is that we'll break for lunch now. We'll start back at 1 o'clock with Florida A&M University, and we'll make up some time along the way. Someone from USF can give me a little direction. I'm assuming that lunch is out in the, straight out behind us. Okay, great. So yeah, lunch is right out in the area right behind us, near the restrooms. Thank you very much.